Hey there, Ms. Thomas Haffey. We're going to be looking at Chapter 13 here in Principles of Marketing today. Chapter 13 deals with supply chain management and marketing channels. This is, let's be fair, it's not the most exciting realm of marketing on the surface, at least. We're not talking about Super Bowl ads, though we have one as an example today. We're not looking at personal selling. We're not looking at product development and things like that. We're looking at something that's the behind the scenes of successful marketing and therefore successful business that is vitally important to understand and vitally important to get right. When we're talking about supply chains, that's how we get stuff from where it's made, from that manufacturer to the grubby little paws of our end consumers. And if we don't understand how that flow happens and how to make it happen the most efficiently and effectively, then we're not going to do as well as we could. Let's look at a topical example right now. Now, at least as far as when I'm recording this, this is late March 2021. You, of course, may be watching this in a future time, but we've just had a major global logistics and supply chain breakdown, literally speaking, just about, because we had a large cargo ship get stuck in the Suez Canal around Egypt. Let's take a look at some of the points behind that. Make it bigger.
A massive cargo tanker blocking the Suez Canal could delay shipments to the U.S. of everything from food to furniture and spike gas prices. On Monday, the Ever Given, an over 1,000-foot container ship, was blown sideways by dust storms, completely blocking the canal and backing up dozens of ships, a watery traffic jam at a critical global choke point. About 12% of world trade passes through the Suez in Egypt, according to market research firm Argus Media. It's a key waterway that connects Asian factories to Europe through the Mediterranean, and from there to ports and markets on the East Coast. Backed up on either side are cargo ships that could contain clothes, shoes, exercise equipment, electronics, car parts, carpets. Really, anything you can buy in a store made in China could be on those ships. Plus, over 13 million barrels of crude oil, according to estimates, adding further supply pressure on gas prices already rising as production lags and lockdown restrictions ease, sending more drivers to hit the road. From Beijing to Denmark to D.C., all eyes are on the rescue effort as diggers and tugboats have unsuccessfully tried to dislodge the massive ship. Next, an elite salvage team will take a crack, according to the Suez Canal Authority.
So they're going to try to do several things. They'll start trying to offload water, ballast, oil, fuel. But again, they have to be very careful about this. The vessel is hung up on the banks, and what you can't do is take a lot of weight off the ends and put a lot of what they call a sagging stress on the vessel. You can conceivably crack the hull, cause an oil spill, but worse, catastrophically fracture the vessel in half.
Experts say it could take days or weeks to move the behemoth, capable of carrying more than 20,000 freight boxes. It's another straw on the already broken back of global trade, already struggling from pandemic impacts like ramped up consumer demand and decreased port capacity from both COVID restrictions and a worker shortage. Every day that passes, another 50 ships get held up or have to decide to take a 10-plus day longer route around Africa, and the ripple effects only grow.
What we're looking at here, particularly, is a supply chain issue, especially how we're managing and moving product, whatever is in those boxes. Like you said, clothes, who knows what else, oil tankers. They're sitting there. They have been sitting there. It's been about a week, and they actually just got that ship unstuck. So yay. But in the process, this week-long delay, this literal backup on this highway of the water, there's been tens of billions of dollars lost or delayed because of a logistics breakdown, because our supply chain has been impacted. Now, the supply chain is defined as this connected chain. Think of all the different parts and pieces that connect from the manufacturer to that end consumer. All the businesses, internal and external to a given company or firm or brand, that perform or support some kind of logistics function, logistics, that moving, that connecting, that distribution, very much in the place element, obviously. Now, when we're talking about supply chain management, that's particularly the system that coordinates and integrates all the parts and pieces, the activities that are performed with our supply chain members that seamlessly, hopefully, seamlessly connect, again, from manufacturer to consumer and all the parts and pieces in between that. And that includes things like the boat that the products are being literally shipped on, the retail stores that the shelf might be bare in a couple weeks because what would be refilling your local Walmart is stuck on a boat in Egypt right now. That's kind of this point. When we get from the source to our point of consumption, whoever's the end consumer, whether that's a person, a family, another business, a government entity, all those different potential buyers, users, consumers of whatever it is we sell, how do we connect them? Hopefully with an enhanced customer value and an enhanced economic value along the way. We'll talk a little more about that. We're talking about how we integrate our supply chain, how we connect those links in the chain. It's our overall performance is greater than the sum of our parts. When we put things together and they work well together, we actually reduce friction. We reduce lead times. If I know you're fixing to be running out on your retail store shelf and I get it to you before you're out, that saves you realizing you ran out, having to place an order, having to wait on it to be delivered. That's a simple integration kind of idea. When we put multiple functional pieces and parts or different companies together, they can link up and makes it a better experience for everyone. Now, this is honestly stuff we don't see day to day. When this is working correctly, we, the general public, the consumers, don't feel this. The most you see and feel about the given supply chain in your daily life is the 18-wheeler that passes you on the highway, or if you're in that store, Walmart, Kroger, wherever, and you see a worker pushing a cart with a big box full of whatever the stuff is you're there to buy, and you have to wait for them to put it on the shelf. That's about the most that we really see the outward signs, the shallow view of the supply chain. And when it's working well, when it's working correctly and seamlessly and efficiently, we don't have to care. But when we get a giant boat stuck on the bank, or when, I don't know, a pandemic causes us all to go crazy for toilet paper, that's when we see actually the supply chains break down, links fall apart, and that's where we actually get aggravated as consumers, where what we want isn't available. What we want is now costing a lot more because it's harder to get from a supply and demand issue. When we're thinking about how we put supply chain logistics management into process, there's a number of different pieces that are in play. Now, customer relationship management is absolutely, along with customer service management, a big, what we call marketing realm kind of thing. Now, again, remember, marketing is encompassing all of this, but sometimes we don't feel it the same way. But when you're thinking about the marketing aspects of things, when we're dealing with, say, customers, relationship management and service management are absolutely important and noticeable parts of that. When I want people that come to my store to feel valued, when I want their experience to go well, when I give them a coupon or some kind of promo code, that's all CRM and CSM type issues, how we keep the customer happy and build that relationship, long-term loyalties and things like that. We're dealing with demand management. We need to understand how many people are going to come to our store, how many people are going to come looking for our service. How do we know how much demand to be ready for, how much to build, how much to produce, how much to ship out? Dealing with things like order fulfillment, you got to think about how much online shopping took off during the pandemic. That's a big problem from a shipping standpoint. Even if Amazon claims that they've got the thing in stock, maybe it was such a big rush on it that by the time the dust cleared, well, we only had 50 of them in stock, and it turns out 150 people ordered it all yesterday. And by the time we caught up, maybe we were out of stock. Actually, that's a very annoying time, especially we see that in a year-to-year kind of fashion around Christmas, honestly, popular items go out of stock. And sometimes there's a Black Friday sale, for instance, where they think that they have enough, but by the time they count everything and get all the orders in line, you don't get it. You have to be canceled and refunded. It's a big issue. When we understand demand, how much is going to be asked of us, maybe we can better understand how to manufacture it properly. That flow management is looking at production. How much of the raw materials are we going to need? How many employees are we going to need on our factory production line in order to make it happen? When we're dealing with suppliers, no matter what we do, what level of business we are, we probably have suppliers of some form or fashion. That could be raw materials that get processed through our factory. That could be raw materials that are ingredients in our restaurant. That could be things like paper and pens and office supplies that we need in order to do the things we do. There's always a supplier in play, usually a lot of suppliers connected. And the better we can connect and integrate those together, the better we can make our seamless structure happen. Now we got to deal with product development. We've talked about product development, how we commercialize that, how we get it for sale. Remember how we're trying to get to that break-even point of how much cost we've already input in the development and rollout process before we actually get to any selling and profit margins. That deals with supply chains. We got to have the product. We got to have the raw materials to make the product. We got to manufacture it. We got to ship it out. And finally, it gets sold and we start to make some money off of it. Lastly, we got returns management. That's an issue on the back end. If something is not up to standard, if people are not pleased, if they just end up not wanting the thing, how do we get it back? How do we give them their money? And how do we get the product back? Or do we choose not to? That's kind of been a big point in the pandemic also, is returns, especially of online shopping, wasn't worth it to companies like Amazon, for instance, to take some of the stuff back, especially low price things or things that were very bulky, large, that were hard and expensive to ship. Amazon would basically say, you say it's broken, fine. Just throw it away, recycle it to something. We're going to give you your money back. Sorry for the inconvenience. They didn't want to deal with the hassle, the logistical headache of getting it back. Not everything, especially things that are more expensive, that are easier to ship, things like that. We're still worth taking returns on. But there's also a personal health and hygiene issue of, once it's been in my home, once I've breathed on it, do I want to put it back on the shelf for the next person? That was a big change in our pandemic world as well. Now we're thinking about trends in supply chain management, kind of what's happened in history in more recent developments of technologies and things like that, and how we move forward and do things. We got all kinds of things. Outsourcing of logistics functions, public and private partnerships have been a big deal for a long time. Electronic distribution's brand new. Global supply chain management, again, that Suez Canal point coming in, and how we do more tech stuff, analytics, how we can keep track of supply and demand a lot more effectively. Looking at particularly outsourcing of logistics. One example of that is you may have a store. You may have a company that produces things, or a store as a retailer that sells things. Well, Amazon wants to help you be on Amazon through their Fulfillment by Amazon program.
How to use Fulfillment by Amazon. Register your account. You run a successful business, and with Fulfillment by Amazon, it's about to get better. Create an Amazon account and follow the step-by-step instructions to register your business. Well done. List items and assign inventory. Now it's time to list your products. First, create a new product listing. Next, decide how you want to track your inventory, either by manufacturer barcode or by printing your own barcodes, and how you want to ship your products. How to estimate your fees. We have 2 ways of estimating fees. For items you've never sold through FBA, you can compare your fulfillment costs. For items you've already added to your FBA inventory, you can use Fee Preview to review your estimated fees. Create your shipment. To ship inventory to Amazon, start by creating a shipping plan. Include the product, quantity, and shipping method. Make sure everything is prepped and labeled, or let Amazon do it for you. Then track your shipment through the fulfillment process. Preparing products for shipping. Some products need special packaging. You may need special supplies, such as poly bags, shrink wrap, bubble wrap, special labels, and tape. Following Amazon prep requirements ensures your items arrive to Amazon safe and intact. Track your inventory. With Fulfillment by Amazon, you can track the inventory you send to Amazon by shipment ID, tracking ID, and processing status. After your inventory is checked in and put away, it's available for sale on the Amazon website. Promote your listing. Advertising helps increase the visibility of your business. For example, use sponsored products to create ads targeted to relevant customer searches. Monitor progress, make adjustments, and plan your next move. Manage your inventory. Fulfillment by Amazon offers several tools to help you manage your inventory. You can add, remove, and update products quickly and easily. Use the inventory dashboard to review product performance and manage your excess and slow-moving stock. How to get paid. To get paid, we need your business name, address, and tax and bank account information. No matter where you sell, we make it easy for you to get paid in your local currency.
What Amazon is doing, of course, is helping you, another entity, use their system in order to fulfill your supply chain, your logistics. Instead of you having to deal with every customer and shipping everything, and only maybe to a limited geographic market, put it on Amazon, your marketplace is now global, millions of potential customers. We see public and private partnerships in all sorts of say tax and real estate kind of deals when a local city, county, state provides some land or tax incentives for a company to come in and build a new headquarters or build a new factory. That's absolutely a public-private kind of connection. Political and legal aspects are something deeper we're not dealing with in this, honestly. Think about electronic distribution and our ability to buy stuff on not just Amazon and have it shipped to us, but buy things digitally and have it connected and downloadable and streamable. There's been a big shift in the last couple decades, honestly. The music industry was really the first to really hit this electronic distribution methodology. Well, late 90s, early 2000s, we had file sharing sites like Napster and LimeWire, basically illegally digitizing, say, CDs and putting those files out there for free, for piracy. That led to a shift in how we consume music and the rise of things like iTunes, and then streamers like, well, YouTube has a huge streaming market for music and music videos, but also Pandora and Spotify and SiriusXM and things like that. The electronic distribution of entertainment, TV, movies, music, books, education, concerts, experiences have all evolved, and that's a supply chain issue. And instead of physically having to distribute something, putting it on a boat, putting it in a truck and having to drive it to you, I got to understand how to digitally distribute to you. Good internet connectivity, the proper electronic devices, some kind of branding things. Am I going on YouTube Live or Facebook Live or something like that? That's digital distribution and supply chain management issues. Globally, basically, we are a global market in just about everything you can think of. You look around your house and see the back of any product you take off the shelf or off of your desk and look where it's made. Very few, honestly, things that we as Americans consume are made in America today. Now, there's been some push for that to change, and depending on what we're talking about, but for the most part, small stuff and things that we just use in our day-to-day life in order to make them economically more affordable for Americans, we accept that they're made somewhere else in the world where labor is cheaper, where raw materials are plentiful, where the land is easy to throw up a factory and start building things. That's a global supply chain issue. And as long as a boat doesn't get stuck in a canal, we tend to feel very little friction with waiting on things like that to happen. technologies and analytics, how we track and connect things, is only continuing to evolve. Obviously, tech is always advancing. When I think about our marketing channels, that's the set of interdependent organizations that connect. Think of them as the stepping stones from the producer to you, the consumer. Every time it transfers to another company, another entity on its way to you, that's the channel that it's distributing as. We're going to look at how we build out those channels and how they're connected in detail coming up. The channel members, each of those stepping stones on the way from the producer to the consumer, have to negotiate with each other. They're buying and selling products back and forth, changing ownership between buyer and seller, producer to consumer down the way in order to get it to where it needs to be, where the final demand is. Because you got to think that stuff is manufactured in a factory or some kind of organization, who knows where in the world, and the customers for that desired product could be literally on the other side of the globe. We have to get it from point A to point B, wherever along the way that might be. Now, when we think about our marketing channel, what kind of functions that it performs, we got to think about what it is these different companies do. Why are they there? Now, for one thing, we have stepping stones, logistical movement stepping stones, but we also have certain needs. If I'm a car manufacturer, wherever you want that car manufacturer to be, we'll talk about an example of some cars here at the end of the chapter, actually. But let's say that you're an American-made car manufacturer. Let's say that you're Nissan Motors in Canton, Mississippi, just north of Jackson, or some other local Southeast manufacturer. Well, you might produce cars in these few states in the Southeast, but you want to sell that model car in Wyoming. Well, then you got to move it. That's a channel function. Well, how do you move a car from Mississippi to Wyoming? Well, you could literally drive it, but then that puts miles on it, right? And literally somebody has to drive it. And let's say I want to sell 10,000 cars in Wyoming this year. Well, then that's a lot of just cars driving down the interstate, isn't it? Well, we use trucks. You've seen those 18-wheelers with cars stacked on it. Sometimes those are ones that I wish would break down at my house and they need my help to unload them. That'd be fun sometimes, but that's a way that they function. They can only put so many cars on one of those 18-wheelers. But if we're talking about boxes of computer speakers, Bluetooth speakers, something like that, that are much smaller, think about how many of those things, even in a box, can fit in one of those big truck trailers. That's some channel functions. Literally, the 18-wheeler, the shipping, the logistics of moving things from one point to another, that's a channel function. That's a specialization. Let's look at, we looked at Amazon and how you can put your business online and sell through Amazon. How about Best Buy? This is actually a Super Bowl commercial from 2013, I think, where we had the Super Bowl ad with Amy Poehler looking at Best Buy and how they
Excuse me,
things.
do you have all the popular smartphones?
We do.
AT&T?
Yes.
T-Mobile?
Sure.
Sprint?
Mhm.
Verizon?
Got it.
Do you make commission on this?
No.
Do you have all the plans?
We do.
Does this make my head look big?
No.
Can you activate all of these?
Yes, we can.
Can you transfer my contacts?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
I'm pretty popular.
No problem.
You're good. What number am I thinking of?
9.
Yes.
Reserve a $50 Best Buy gift card and get it when you're...
That doesn't matter because that's an old promotion. What are we looking at here? We're looking at a specialization and division of labor. Best Buy is a retailer, but they are specializing in electronics. I might go to Best Buy for a phone, a TV, a computer, a drone, but I'm not going to Best Buy maybe to buy my mattress. I'm not going to Best Buy to buy a picture frame unless it's a digital picture frame. I'm not going to Best Buy to buy crayons. There's a specialization. That's what they do. That's what they sell. And the companies that need to sell electronics and digital type products like that go to them. That's a discrepancy issue sometimes of how we make our contact more efficient from the producer to the consumer. How do we get it there? How do we get it in the right hands at the right time? Here's a a weird old example that our book uses, honestly. This is outdated, and I'll tell you why, because we're dealing with TV manufacturers. Now, Sony, Toshiba, popular, still around, very well-known electronics manufacturers. RCA, JVC, you can actually still get TVs from them. Not quite as popular, not easy to find. But then we got Zenith. Zenith sitting here. Zenith is an old electronics brand. They were American-made TVs, honestly, but Zenith sold to LG in 95 to 99, depending on which version of when they bought out things. LG still produced some Zenith branded stuff, but basically you hadn't been able to buy a Zenith TV in North America in 20 years. Great example. Wonderful job here, guys. Regardless, the point here is the idea that we got 4 different customers, okay? Each of them are coming to buy a TV. They're shopping for a TV. They want to find a TV. Now, without marketing channels, without a supply chain, if we wanted to make a more direct channel connection, we'll talk about that in a minute, honestly, each of those 4 customers might have to go to the Sony store and the Toshiba store and the RCA store and the JVC store and go back in time to the Zenith store. And so when we think about the math algorithm of this, that we've got 5 different options these consumers are going to look at times 4 different consumers, then that's 20 separate transactions, because each of those stores has to have a salesperson and stock clerks and all kinds of people there to help each of these individual consumers. And for the consumer, this is a lot of work. They got to drive all over town to these 5 different stores if they want to be heavy analytical shoppers and find the best choice. And then if it's not the last place they went, let's be honest, you got to go back to that 3rd place you went to that really had the one you wanted. That's exhausting. That's so inefficient. That's a waste of time and resources. Well, let's put in an intermediary. Let's put in a marketing channel member like Best Buy. And now JVC, Sony, Toshiba, RCA, and time traveling Zenith can all send, sell, ship their TV options to the local Best Buy. And these 4 consumers can just walk into one store. Instead of 20 or more transactions to connect all these entities together, we've narrowed that down. And even in this odd little situation, to 9. We've cut the efficiency, or we've doubled the efficiency. We've cut the effort and the time in over half, from 20 down to 9. Now just Best Buy has to be here with salespeople and cashiers and stock clerks and things like that. And the 4 consumers only have to go to one store. And they might have to walk up and down an aisle looking at the various TVs, but they don't have to drive all around town to get it. That's a simplified idea that, of course, we kind of go, well, duh. That's why I go to Walmart. That's why it's the one-stop shop. That's a rise in how we do business. This isn't how it's always been done. That's the point. It's how we're used to doing it now. I go to Walmart and Amazon and I can order just about everything that I need in my life because they have set themselves up to be that way. That was not the case 30, 40, 50, 100,000 years ago. That was a change. That's an evolution. That's a new technology and system that we have a better market space now that we can connect with. We have channel intermediaries that are those stepping stones between the manufacturer and the consumer. And we have various ones of those that we need to think about sometimes. A merchant wholesaler is some kind of an institution that takes the goods, buys them, takes ownership from the manufacturer, and stores, repackages, promotes, resells, ships them out to what we might think of as retailers. But by the time it gets to your local Dollar General, your local Kroger, your local Walmart, maybe it's already touched some other firm's hands, you could say. When we have agents and brokers, they're a little bit different. And this is just kind of big picture ideas because it's very dependent on what it is we're selling, the industries involved. So not everything that you buy touches a wholesaler or touches an agent or a broker. But we're trying to give you kind of big picture, textbook level ideas. So depending on where you end up in your career, you may have at least heard of the things that you need to be involved with. Agents, brokers are wholesaling intermediaries that act as salespeople. They don't actually buy the thing and then sell it like a wholesaler does. They are an agent. They make the deal between this entity and this entity. They bring them to the table, they negotiate, they get a fee for their trouble. Now, how we understand how to wholesale between manufacturers and end retailers and consumers is, again, dependent on a lot of variables. We're not honestly going deep into this, but what it is we sell, how it's produced, where in the world it's produced, and where it needs to be sold to in its end form, how big it is, how much difficulty it is to ship it, to stock it on shelves, the price, the value of things, all that is very product characteristic stuff. Buyer considerations is, are we selling it to end consumers? Are we selling it to end businesses? Are we selling it to government entities? Does the buyer need it as soon as possible from manufacturer? They need it in their hands as quickly as they can be. Or is it something product characteristic wise that they're just going to the local store as a buyer and buying it off the shelf, or they need it customized for their needs? And then what's the larger market characteristics, how it's produced, how it's shipped, what's the economies like, what's the legal and political ramifications? If it's made in one part of the world and has to get to another part of the world, is there customs involved? Is there literally a boat stuck in a canal somewhere that deals with what we're shipping and buying and functioning around? Now, we got some functions that these intermediaries deal with. Now, one of the things I want you to think about with this stepping stone of intermediaries is if each one of those intermediaries between the source, the manufacturer, and the end point, the consumer, every one of those companies wants to get paid. Every one of them needs to pay the bills, wants to make a profit. They're in business to be a business. So what you have to think about and remember, or try not to think too much about because it's sad sometimes, is the more people, companies, intermediaries that touch the thing from its source to when you get it in your consumer little grubby paws, every one of those companies wants to get paid, which means the price rises every time it changes hands. So the more complex the supply chain from source to you, generally speaking, the more expensive it's got to be. Sometimes it's unavoidable. It's the only way you can get it. But if you have choices, sometimes it's cheaper to buy things from a source than to buy things from the local retailer. It just depends on what we're talking about. It's kind of an aside. When we're looking about functions, we can divide those up into three kind of categories: transactional functions, logistical functions, facilitating functions. Transactional, we got to think about selling, the promotion side of things, negotiations, the risk taking of say an intermediary that's a wholesaler takes a pallet worth of product from the manufacturer, and then they got to hold this pallet in the logistical way. They got to physically store it, maybe sort it. That Amazon fulfillment system sorts out into different places, sends it to warehouses around the country, for instance, and they negotiate. How much is the retailer willing to pay the wholesaler for the thing? Again, they both want to make some money, right? So the price has to go up. There's a profit margin in play there. And then we got some facilitating functions like research, demand characteristics, how much supply is currently stuck on a boat in a canal somewhere, or how much is on the local store shelf, how much demand is there. Facilitations might also be things like financing, who's paying the bill to get it shipped from China to Wyoming or wherever the thing might be, and who gets paid when, some kind of a negotiations of you're paying before it gets on the boat or you're paying after it comes off the boat. That's a big deal, and how cost structures impact our logistics. Here's kind of a visualization, thinking about how complex or simplified a supply chain, a channel might be. Our simplest version for individual personal consumers, families, you, the human, is from the producer to you. You just get it directly. Now let's think about this for a restaurant. If you, the person, go to the restaurant and buy the food, take possession of the food directly from the cook, that made the food. That's about as direct as it can get, isn't it? But instead, let's say, maybe not perfect for what we're looking at here, but let's think about intermediaries for your food. Let's say you don't want to leave your house. I don't know, maybe a pandemic has forced you to stay at home for a year and a half. What about if you use a company like DoorDash, for instance, Uber Food, Uber Eats. See, that's the marketer and me getting things wrong. I'm sorry. Let's say you paid an intermediary to go pick up the food. Well, then that driver, that delivery company has gone to the restaurant to pick up your food. They take possession of it because the restaurant was going to get paid somehow. It could be through Uber Eats or DoorDash. It could be something else. And then they bring the food to you at your residence. That's an intermediary in play. And guess what? They want to get paid. There's a delivery fee. Maybe you have to tip them because that's social construct. The restaurant makes money. The delivery company makes money, and you get your food. And your effort and time investment perhaps is lower, but your financial estimate is a little higher. That's an intermediary in play. When we're thinking about individual consumers and how we get a lot of our physical products, we see that complexity of our supply chains, of our marketing channels can get very complex. When we go from nobody in between the producer and the consumer to multiple entities in between, maybe an agent and a broker, who then gets it to a wholesaler, who takes possession, who then sells it to a retailer, who then takes possession, who then sells it to you, the consumer, who then takes possession. Every stepping stone in the chain, somebody's got to get paid. And the time also, generally speaking, increases too. So the time from when the thing was produced to when it got to you is obviously going to be affected. When we're dealing with manufactured products, shelf-stable stuff, it doesn't really matter when the mouse from my computer was made. I don't need it fresh. It can sit on a boat in a canal for a week. It can then go across the ocean for another week or two. It can be sitting in the dock at customs. It might be put in a warehouse for a month. It might eventually be broken down into a pallet and put on an 18-wheeler and driven across the country. Maybe it then sits on the retailer's back shelf for another month before there's room on the shelf for it to sit there for a week and a half before I walk in the store and buy me a new wireless mouse. That's okay. I don't care if it was manufactured 8 minutes ago or 8 months ago. The mouse is the mouse is the mouse. That's obviously different for perishable goods like food. We need it quick. We need it fastly. I'm tired, y'all. Quickly distributed, as fast from source to consumer as possible there. Now, we have a slightly different, it's the same concept, but a slightly different point when we're thinking about business and industrial products, business customers, government entity customers. We can still be very direct. The producer selling it straight to the industrial user, the business, or to the government buyer. But we might have some other things. We keep that agent or broker that may negotiate the sale, the distribution from that producer to the end consumer. Again, not taking possession. That's a big point. Agents, brokers don't take possession. They just make the deal happen. But we might put in something like an industrial distributor. An example of an industrial distributor is actually a company called Fastenal. You may or may not have ever heard of them. They put ads out on Pandora. They've got stores in some cities. You might see a truck rolling down the highway. But Fastenal is what you could think of as a retailer, but they're also an industrial distributor. You, a human consumer, could walk in and buy some duct tape or a big fan, some other parts, pieces, tools, things to help your business, your factory, your farm operate. But they also act as a bigger entity, an intermediary for state and cooperative contracts. As a supplier for your factory, you might just get shipments from Fastenal. They are an industrial distributor that also acts as a retailer. That's just a little bit more of a hybrid version. And again, the more intermediaries, the more stepping stones in between the producer and the buyer, the more it's going to take time and the higher the expense. Our last, well, not last, but our last big picture kind of topic that we're looking at in this chapter is our distribution intensity. Now that means how much does the brand, the company, the manufacturer, the source, how much do they put out there? How easy is it to connect with them as a consumer? How easy is it to find their products and buy them? Now, on the surface, you might go with, well, what do you mean, how easy is it to find? Don't we want, as marketers, our stuff to be as easy as possible to acquire? Yes. I don't want to make it any harder than I have to for the customer to find me and pay me. It would be stupid to make it hard for them to find me and pay me. I'm not playing hide and seek with revenue. That's not the point. But you got to think that depending on what we are selling, there may or may not be a lot of demand for it. There may or may not be customers trying to knock down the door to get it. They may not need it as often, or they may not need it in very much quantity. That's when we're dealing with distribution intensity. Again, we're very much deep in the place element of the 4 Ps of the marketing mix here. When we think about where you can buy things, it does start to get a little bit more complex. Think about what you can buy at your local Dollar General or gas station. All the different products, all the different brands. Things like candy, chips, soda, very easy to get. You don't have to drive very far. You don't have to go a lot of distance. Literally, you want some candy, some chips, or some soda, you can go down to the first floor of Renault Hall. There's a vending machine or two. Those types of products are incredibly intensively distributed. On the flip side, let's say you need a new bulldozer. You can't go to Dollar General and get a bulldozer. You can't even go on Amazon and buy a full bulldozer. I'm outraged by that. No. The idea that there's not a lot of customers, honestly, for bulldozers. And if you are a customer for bulldozers, you may or may not need a new one every other day. Either your business is booming or your employees are terrible at their job and they keep breaking bulldozers. That's just not something that we buy a lot of, buy often enough. So when we're thinking about things that are intensively distributed, we know people of all shapes, sizes, colors, ethnicities, and income levels are going to need our product. They want a lot of our product. They want to buy our product easily, often. That's very intensively distributed stuff. We want it out there whenever you can want it, you can get it. On the flip side, we don't need a bulldozer dealership on every street corner. There's not that much demand. What we think of exclusive distribution is something that's harder to get to because it isn't worth putting in the effort and the expense and the logistical things to get it more intensively distributed. Selective, honestly, just somewhere in between them. And we've got a couple examples we'll go through. First, the definitions. Intensive distribution is aimed at having a product available in every outlet. Now, when we see every outlet, every logical outlet. I'm not going to the local Texaco gas station to buy a couch. That's illogical. But I'm going there for gas, some snacks, maybe some basic car parts like motor oil. Those are things that are intensively distributed because of the outlet's logical reason to be there. Selective distribution is some kind of dealership model that's a little more screened. There's less options. There's less connectivity there to eliminate all but few in a single geographic area. And that's a relative term. We could be talking about a neighborhood, a city, county, a state, a country could be the area we're dealing with. It's very dependent on the products in question, the industries that we're dealing with. These, again, are big picture kind of ideas that we then can apply in a variety of different ways, depending on what we're selling. Exclusive distribution is very exclusive. What a crazy way to name something. There's only one option or very limited options in a given area. Again, whether that's tiny or huge, the given area we are relatively talking about, there's only so many choices there. Let's think about cars for a second. Okay, let's say you're going to buy a new car. Depending on where you live geographically, you may have a variety of different options of buying a car. Even in most small towns, you probably have a used car dealer. Okay, they may have only used cars that they got through trades, going to auctions, who knows what. And they could be all different makes and models and ages and price ranges, right? Buyer beware, they may or may not be worth your time and effort. But that's kind of an intensive distribution strategy. Take it to a step further. Let's talk about just new cars. Think about wherever you live, wherever you've traveled, how many different car dealerships, actual branded, that's a Chevy dealer, that's a Dodge dealer, that kind of thing. How big a city, how big a town do you have to be in, do you have to live in order to have a branded new car dealership? I can think of a lot of small towns in Mississippi and wherever else you want to think about that are too small that it's illogical to have a branded car dealership, okay, new car dealership. Well, even the ones that are, let's think about Columbus, because that's where the W is. And Columbus is honestly a larger city in the scheme of the Southeast, honestly. And when there's actually a lot of demand, there's a big shopping epicenter of Columbus because it's surrounded by a lot of, honestly, open countryside. And especially throughout history, Columbus on the river, Columbus connected to the railroads. Columbus has been a hub of intensity and distribution throughout its history. So that's continued on today. There's a number of different new car dealerships. Carl Hogan by themselves has Chevy, Dodge, GMC, Honda, Toyota. Then we've got Columbus Nissan. There's some others. But the point is there's a lot of different new car dealerships available, intensively distributed. Even at the new car market, we could say, relatively speaking, intensive distribution means if you're in a big enough city, there's a number of intensely distributed car brands. Some of those major big car brands that if you just look in a general parking lot at any given store, you'll see that car, that car, that car, that brand, that brand, that brand. Those are intensively distributed. Let's say you want to be a little fancier. You don't want just a Chevy. You don't even want just a Cadillac, which is also a GM brand under the same as Chevy. Let's say you want to be a little fancy. You want to be a little bit sporty. You know, spend a little more money. How about a Porsche? Maybe you like them, maybe you don't. Maybe you don't care at all about cars. I'm sorry, indulge me. It's an example. When we're thinking about selective distribution, Porsche might be an example of a selectively distributed car brand. Now, like I said, Columbus has quite a few car branded options, but Columbus ain't got Porsche. If you want to go buy a Porsche, you're going to have to go for a drive. Get your car. Never mind. Let's just say Google claims that the closest Porsche dealers are Birmingham, Alabama, Jackson, Mississippi, and Memphis, Tennessee. Basically, Columbus is right in the middle of those three options. That's an interesting thing to think about. When we talked about a given area, it can be big or small. If I'm just talking about intensely distributed, your Chevy, your Dodge, your Nissan, your Toyotas, Columbus, given general area, kind of small, lots of options there. But when we go to a select distribution, we actually have to widen out that space. You want a Porsche, you're going to have to put in a couple hours drive in any given direction. North, south, east, west, kind of, sort of. You can go on any of the major highways, these little yellow lines collecting us. We're somewhere in this area. You just got to get on a major highway and keep driving, and you'll find a Porsche dealer eventually. Birmingham, Memphis, Jackson. That's selective dealerships. What's that going to set you back? Well, let's say the Porsche is the Macan, I believe, is the cheapest off-the-shelf Porsche you can get. It's an SUV, and you can get a Porsche for under $60,000. That's not cheap, y'all. That ain't pocket change. That ain't something you just walk around with. I hope. Maybe you don't. You remember the W if you do well in your career. We have scholarship available and things like that. In alumni endowments, come back and see us. But you get into a Porsche, drive a few hours to one of these cities, get into a Porsche for under $60K. That's going to put you in the fairly fancy car market of the Southeast and of Mississippi. You see a Porsche driving around Columbus, you go, who that? Okay. Let's say you want to go bigger. You've done even better with your business degree. How about you're going for a Lambo? The Lamborghini Urus is the cheapest option out there. It's also an SUV. Do you see a trend there? Even in luxury brands, even in sport brands, SUVs are becoming more and more popular. That's a whole different marketing aspect of things. The Lamborghini Urus is the fastest tested by Motor Trend SUV currently available. It makes some ungodly amount of power, and it will go 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. That's kind of quick. Okay. What's a Lambo going to cost you? You get into a Porsche SUV, still pretty quick, honestly, pretty quick, pretty fancy, for under 60,000. This Lamborghini Urus is going to cost you a little over 200,000. And when I say a little over 200,000, I mean take 200,000 and add a Kia to it. That's where you're at. When we start talking in those kind of numbers, that's what you kind of start thinking about. That's the cheapest Lambo. Let's look down at their most expensive production version. That's the Aventador SVJ Roadster. That means it's got no lid on it, if you so desire. This one will cost you north of $500,000. And when I mean north of $500,000, I mean take $500,000 and add that Porsche to it. That's where we're at. Before you start adding fancy custom options. A little expensive. What's very interesting about this is this car with a V12 that makes 760 horsepower. It's actually a motor produced by Porsche. Why? Because Porsche and Lambo and Bugatti and Audi are all, and others, owned by the Volkswagen Automotive Group. They are all Volkswagen umbrella company brands in this day and age, not originally, but that's where we are today. They are owned by the Volkswagen Group, the largest automotive group in the world. And for the most part, when you think about some of these brands, they are not your run-of-the-mill, find them everywhere distributed brands. Volkswagen, honestly, is the most intensively distributed, and still you're not finding a Volkswagen dealer in every place. Whereas we are thinking about your Chevy, your Dodge, your Nissan, your Honda. You could say those are intensively distributed. Porsche, a little more selectively distributed. You got to go all the way to Birmingham, Memphis, or Jackson. You want to get into exclusive in this example. You want to get into your Lambo, you got to go at least to Atlanta. Atlanta is your closest Lambo dealership. So you're going to spend several hours on the road to get to your new Lamborghini. And you better bring some cash money with you to get it. Maybe you don't like fancy sports cars. Maybe you're thinking about, wow, why are we even talking about this? Way out of my price range. How's about something, hold on. A little more close to home. How about gift cards? Now, depending on your family, your friends, your peer groups, and your birthdays and holidays and Christmas and things like that, you may or may not have people that give you good gifts. Maybe they don't know you. Maybe they can't pick something you'll like to save their lives. Maybe when you unwrap it, you really are just hoping it's about this big and it's an envelope and you go, oh, look, it's either cash money, which is always the right color, or a gift card to a store that obviously you hope you would also use and enjoy. We see gift cards for sale all sorts of places. This happens to be a picture of a gift card display in Kroger. And Kroger is there, for one thing, selling you products like food, but they're also selling you gift cards. You see things like Lowe's and Home Depot and Sears, and we've got Kohl's and Google Play and iTunes and Hollister. Do they still exist now? I don't know. TJ Maxx and various food entities and things like this. Gift cards are intensively distributed. Let's take an example of iTunes cards or Apple branded cards. If I'm going to thinking about intensively distributed Apple products, Apple gift cards, iTunes cards, things like that would be intensively distributed. But let's say I don't want just an iTunes card, just an Apple gift card. I want an iPhone. Honestly, iPhones are relatively well available today. Not when they first launched. When the iPhone was first introduced many moons ago, AT&T was the exclusive distributor for iPhones, but that soon expanded to Verizon's and Sprint's and T-Mobile's, and now all sorts of brands sell new and refurbed iPhones through all sorts of networks. If I want an iPhone, here's what Apple tells me. My closest is 6 different places basically around Columbus, including a badly put one here because that ain't Walmart over here. But Walmart basically will sell it either as Walmart, Boost Mobile for some reason is listed here too. We got Metro, we got C-Spire, AT&T. We can expand up to West Point and go to their Walmart. You can find an iPhone relatively simply around here. But to be fair, I can't go to Dollar Tree and buy an iPhone. I can't go to the Shell gas station and buy an iPhone. I could go buy iTunes cards there, though. So if we're thinking about our distribution levels, iTunes gift cards, Apple gift cards, intensively distributed, available in just about every outlet that makes sense. But when we're talking about iPhones, more expensive, more logically that people aren't going to need them as often or in as great a quantity, they're more selectively distributed. Selective, you've got to go to a particular dealership to get it. But let's take it one step aptly further. You want a new actual Mac. You want an iMac, you want a MacBook, Air, Pro, whichever. You got to go a little further. It's starting to look a little bit back that Porsche dealerships, but we're thinking a little deeper. We're going to say that of Apple products, their actual computers are the most exclusively distributed versions. From Columbus, I got to go to Tupelo's Best Buy, where we can ask Amy our way into a new Apple computer. Or I can go to Tuscaloosa to Best Buy and whatever the core is, or I can go down the Meridian to the Best Buy, or apparently Guitar Center in Hoover. For some reason, Guitar Center will sell me a Mac. I don't know. Music production, who knows? What we want to kind of take away from this is when we're talking about intensive, selective, and exclusive distribution, it does depend on what we are selling, the physical products and services and experiences that we're dealing with. Some that we might say are intensive in one realm, when we change the industry, maybe it's selective. So it's not as cut and dry as this or this or this. You got to think about what it is and the level of the overarching market and industry it's a part of. Generally speaking, intensive distribution, it wants to be mass market. They're selling things like convenience goods, food, office supplies, gift cards, very convenient stuff. And they tend to have a lot of different intermediaries, easily moved through the marketplace to get to a lot of different retail outlets, a lot of different choices you can have as a consumer. Selective only has selected intermediaries and some shopping and specialty goods. We kind of talked about that already. Whereas exclusive intensity maybe works with a single intermediary. Maybe it's very source to produce to consumer oriented, very much specialty goods, industrial equipment, big, expensive, heavy stuff, and high-end sports cars, honestly. When we're thinking about the social influences within our channels, these intermediaries, the stepping stones, who's in control, who's got the power, who makes the most money? Those are things that come into play when we're thinking about our supply chains. Now the largest or the most powerful entity might be the ones that have control, so they're very connected terms here, over what happens, how quickly we're going to move things, how we're going to do it, where we're going to distribute, what's the pricing structure. Now, a lot of times, but not always, we think of the manufacturer as being the one in power. They set their MSRP for products, for instance. They choose how much of it to produce so that they can then sell it out to those intermediaries and get it to the end consumer. But sometimes the manufacturer is not the most powerful or the ones that's in control or the leader in that entity. Walmart, for instance, is an incredibly powerful, controlling leader in most, but not all, supply chains. If I'm a small company and I'm looking to grow quickly, I'm looking to really get my feet off the ground and make some money, I would love to get a contract to have my products for sale in Walmart. But guess who chooses whether or not I'm for sale in Walmart? It ain't me. Walmart will interview. Walmart will basically audition and think about, are you good enough for us? How much of you do you think you could sell through us? And they maybe give me a test market, one store, one little shelf, and they wait and see if anybody cares. And if some people start buying it, maybe they give me a little more space. People start buying it in more places, maybe they spread me to their whole distribution network. But if in that test market they go with not a single one sold, you're kicked out. We do not want you. Walmart's in total control of that supply chain. But think about this, there's some very powerful manufacturers out there. Let's think about Procter & Gamble and all the different health and beauty and convenience brands that they produce. If Procter & Gamble decided they didn't want to make any money anymore, and they were not going to sell their shampoos and conditioners and detergents and all of this to Walmart, they could choose to do that. And Walmart would honestly have a lot of empty shelf space that they'd have to fill in with somebody else. So there's some issue there. We do have conflict sometimes. We have to be aware of the potential for conflict in our logistics, in our supply chains, because maybe the manufacturer thinks they're the powerful one, they should be making all the choices. Maybe the retailer thinks they should be making all the choices. Maybe there's an agent or a broker over here going, I tell you what, I don't like either one of you. I want to make all the money. You make it, you sell it, I get paid. That's a conflict issue. How we sell things, how we produce things, whether it's directly sourced, whether it's intermediarily sourced, can have a lot of conflict issues. When we're thinking about how we market as a brand, how do I market my stuff? How do I sell my stuff? How do I logistically distribute my stuff? How do I promote my stuff? How do I get you, the customer, to care about my stuff? Through multi-channel marketing, the customers are offered info, goods, services, support through one or more synchronized channels. Let's say I've got my own website and I'm for sale in Walmart and I'm for sale on Amazon. It might promote better customer behavior. It also creates redundancy and complexity in my distribution system. If I want to sell it myself and I want Walmart to sell it and I want Amazon to sell it and I want to put it in Dollar General and, it might be okay because the customer has a lot of choice. Maybe it's more intensively distributed. But when things break down, when I want to reduce my efforts and costs of labor and keeping up with all these different pieces and parts, it can get expensive and hard. We're moving, not all the way, not everywhere, not all the industries, but a lot of our evolution of marketing today is looking at more omni-channel marketing, where we have connected, because we have the technology to do that, the inventory from the source to the consumer is very much together. We have so much power on the apps on these phones that we can see the local inventory. Let's say I want to buy something at Lowe's. I can pull up and go with, well, there's Columbus, there's Starkville, there's Tupelo, et cetera, keep expanding the network and go with, the thing I want is actually not available in Columbus. They're out of stock. Starkville has it, but they're charging me more. Tupelo has it, and it's actually on sale. As a customer, I might choose to think, is it worth my time to go to where it is, or worth my time to go for where it's cheaper? And how can I do that? One of the most annoying parts of where we are right now as a society is when this thing and the store argue. And I love it and I hate it at the same time, because I will absolutely shop online. I will shop on my app. I will get it to pull me up the map of the store, and it says the thing I want to buy is on aisle 14, spot B. And I go to aisle 14, spot B, and I'm like, I'm not an idiot. There's a 14. This is B, and this is empty shelves. And I look around and I'm like, no, it's not apparent. And I look up high, because everything's up high, and then I don't see it. And so I look at my app again, and it says they should have 40 of these things in stock, but this is an empty shelf. And so how do? I go, hey, can you help me? Push the little buzzer button, just run down somebody who's in the appropriate colored shirt or vest and go with, your app says you should have this thing and it should be here, but I don't see it. And they go and, well, the app's never right. But why not? Because it's human, honestly, not the app. That's very much unhuman. But our systems are still very much integrated in a humanity way. Because maybe there's 40 of them, maybe there's not. And if there aren't, that could be because they sold all 40 and somehow it glitched and they didn't record those sales. It could be because they were supposed to get 40. It was on a truck's manifest. They scanned in thinking they got 40 and it wasn't really on the truck. It could be because there were 40 of them, but somebody stole them all. And so obviously it hasn't been marked as sold. And sometimes there's 40 of them, but they're just over on aisle 37 in the wrong space, sitting 18 feet in the air, and nobody knows they're there or how to find them. Omnichannel is a wonderful idea when it works. It creates better customer control over the shopping experience. We get better satisfaction and loyalty when we can see the supply chain in action. We see it more and more. The pandemic has created more and more opportunities for us to track and watch. UPS will send me an email saying, hey, you've got a package coming today. You can watch the truck live on a map if you click here. If I order food from Domino's, it tracks and tells me, your pizza's in the oven right now. Your pizza is getting cut and boxed right now. Your pizza is out for delivery. It'll be here soon. Those are all customer relationship and customer service management things dealing with omni-channel technology connections. How we move whatever it is we do, whatever it is we sell, whatever it is we produce, services, goods, experiences, ideas, whatever it is, from the source to the consumer, that's logistics, that's supply chain, that's the deep points of the place element of the 4 Ps. It's not the most exciting. I've hopefully tried to make it mildly exciting, but it's vitally important. Without proper supply chain logistics management, market channels, all of this point working out, we don't make money. We don't make as good of money. We have frustrated customers. When supply chains work right, the customer never knows. That's the good thing. If it's seamless, if it's efficient, if it's fluid, the customer just rolls along happily. That's our goal. That's what we want to happen. We'll see you next time. Have a good day.